Okay, welcome everyone to the traditional State of the Union talk on EasyBuild at the EasyBuild user meeting. So to get started, a quick overview of the EasyBuild User Survey. So this is also tradition in this talk that we work our way through the questions that were raised in the user survey and look at the results. So this year there were 74 questions. We included a couple of new questions, and it covers a whole range of aspects related to EasyBuild. This year, for the first time, we had over 100 people joining the survey, so that's very nice. That gives us a good view, I think, on the EasyBuild community. The full survey results raw will be available on the EasyBuild website. They are not there yet, so for now you'll have to do it with the slides, but they will be the full detailed results, including all responses to open questions and things like this will be shared on the EasyBuild website. This is the 5th time that we've done the survey, so that means we're starting to see some trends emerge. And I try to focus on this a bit. So looking back at the last 5 years, how things have changed in the last couple of years. So, and there's, I think, a couple of interesting things that come forward by doing that. What's very important to realize when you're looking at survey results is that there's lots of sampling bias, of course. So you only get people who like to fill out surveys. People who hate that or think 74 questions is totally insane will not fill out the survey. So you're definitely have a big bias there. We sort of make the assumption that the results that we see are relevant for the EasyBuild community, but yeah, we have to be a bit careful when interpreting that. So it's definitely not the case that we're covering every possible type of user of EasyBuild, or people that don't like EasyBuild at all are probably less likely to fill out a survey. One of the new questions was how people got aware of the survey and triggered them to fill it out. The vast majority of that is through the EasyBuild mailing list and Slack. And an interesting observation here is that more people were coming in through the mailing list, even though there's almost double the number of people in the EasyBuild Slack. So that means if you post something in Slack and you want to get something done, you're probably going to be less successful than posting that same thing on the mailing list. So that's an important thing to realize here, I think. But there's some other channels as well, the EasyBuild website, Twitter, or word of mouth, but that's less important. So this is interesting for the years to come. If we want to get good participation in the survey, the mailing list and Slack are definitely the channels to send reminders on. And looking at the demographics, no surprise here, EasyBuild is mostly used in Europe. Actually, over 3/4 of the EasyBuild community is in Europe, if we can assume that these results are relevant. There's actually a small downward trend for North America, which I guess is mostly due to the US and SPAC. So people adopting SPAC there more than they are in Europe. But it is very clear there is a huge bias in the community, and that's very important to be aware of. Most of the people in the community are from North America or Europe, or at least working there. So that means we have a lot of underrepresentation of certain communities, certain continents, and that's important to keep in mind to also keep these people into account, of course. Compared to SPAC, so this is a result from last year. Actually, I haven't seen a detailed study of the new SPAC survey come out, so I couldn't use the latest results. But if you compare this with the results from EasyBuild, the vast majority of the SPAC users are in the US, while there's 27% in Europe, and for EasyBuild, it's basically the other way around. So the focus is in Europe, and a smaller part is in North America, so that's US and Canada. Also here for primary profile, most people in the EasyBuild community are system administrators or user support people, and then a bit of a scattered bunch in the other quarter of the community. One thing that's a bit interesting here is that the software development profile. So in this survey in 2021, the last survey, nobody indicated that they are a software developer. But we did have a new profile mentioned there, a new possible answer, an RSE, so research software engineer. So we'll also have a talk on this later this week at the EasyBuild user meeting. And it seems like most people who were indicating software developer before now picked RSE instead. So that's a bit of an interesting detail here. Also comparing this with SPAC, again, very different. The focus in SPAC is on, well, I should say that the majority of people in the SPAC community are software developers or scientists. And we have only a very small minority of that on the EasyBuild side. So not only are the tools quite different, as Kurt already mentioned, but so are the communities as well. And I guess that shouldn't be a big surprise. When looking where people work, this is relatively stable over time. Most people are at the central computing center at the university, or the national computing center, or the particular research group. So that's the vast majority of people. For the first time, we have somebody working at a cloud provider. So this was a new answer in 2021. And there's one person who indicated that. But overall, yeah, this is pretty stable and also pretty much what we would expect. This is an interesting result. So how long have you been using EasyBuild? For the first time, it's now possible to answer over 10 years since EasyBuild was released 10 years ago. So that's going to start to creep up. The 2 to 5 years looks a bit fishy. So why is that going down? Well, those people are just falling into the over 5 years bucket, essentially. So there's a shift towards people using EasyBuild for a very long time. I consider this a good thing, a good result, because that probably means that once people start using EasyBuild, they stick to it, they're happy with it. Or maybe they have locked themselves in and it's very difficult to switch to something else. That's also possible. But yeah, that's I would say a good result overall. We're still seeing a significant influx of new people. So about 20% of the current EasyBuild community started using EasyBuild in the last year. That's also very good. 20% is rather significant after 10 years, I would say. So we're both having experienced users and new users coming in. But of course, the ratios here are changing over time. So that's also important to be aware of. The majority of people is experienced. We still need to take into account the new people as well and make sure they feel welcome, that there's good documentation for them and so on. How did people first learn about EasyBuild? Overall, this has remained pretty stable. It's pretty much word of mouth, so people seeing presentations or colleagues talking about EasyBuild to others or showing them EasyBuild. There's an increase in the number of people that start using EasyBuild on a new job. So they start a new job, EasyBuild is already being used there, and that's also what they pick up as a part of joining the team. Again, that's a sign to me that teams that start using EasyBuild stick to it. And as new people join the team, they are expected to also learn EasyBuild as a part of their work. So as I already mentioned, 2022 is a special year for EasyBuild. It was first released in 2012, so exactly 10 years ago this year. At least it was publicly available for the first time. It was already under development for a couple of years by then in the HPC Ghent team. With the help of some student interns, actually, we redesigned what was then EasyBuild a couple of times before we were, let's say, not embarrassed anymore about it, and we're happy to release it in public. So if you look at the very first EasyBuild public release, EasyBuild 0.5, which you can still find if you do a bit of searching, it's very, very different from the EasyBuild we have today. There's some critical parts, like even the EB command is just not there in the first couple of releases. So it's very different. That first release did trigger quite a bit of feedback already. It was presented, I think, at the HAPIX conference in April 2012, and it turned a couple of heads already. People were seeing the value of the tool quite early on and started giving us feedback, trying it out. And then quite quickly, we were convinced that this could be a tool that could be useful to the broader community. It was released, the first stable version in 0.1. actually during supercomputing. So the night before we had a talk at supercomputing on EasyBuild, we pushed out EasyBuild 1.0. And that was, yeah, this year, it will be 10 years ago. Since then, the EasyBuild community has been growing and growing rather quickly. To be clear, this was never really our intention. So we didn't want to build a community around the tool. We just wanted to push out what we had, and we figured it could be useful to others. But the way that the community has been growing is not something we expected, or certainly not try to actively do. We've had various meetings, what we call hackathons, where we were focusing on developing some parts of EasyBuild. We did that for a couple of years all across Europe, and also one at TAC in the US. And that gradually evolved into these user meetings where we have more talks about EasyBuild, how people are using EasyBuild or combining it with other tools. We've also made quite a lot of noise about EasyBuild during these Getting Scientific Software Installed BOF sessions at ISC and SE, which were really a hidden attempt to make some EasyBuild advertisement at ISC and SE. And it seems like this has worked quite well. Presentations, tutorials throughout the years, of course, and on all kinds of occasions. So yeah, we're hitting 10 years of EasyBuild. When there was 5 years of EasyBuild at supercomputing, there was some cake. So David took care of having an actual cake there at supercomputing and sharing it with people. Hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do this year as well. And whatever happens, we're not going to let 10 years of EasyBuild pass by unnoticed. So we will do some fun stuff throughout the year, and there may be even a couple of surprises later in the year which I can't really tell much about. So stay tuned. Then going back to the survey, so what convinced people over the years to start using EasyBuild? It's really the core functionality of EasyBuild, so the framework, the automation of installing software. So the main thing it is being used for, that's also what people why people started using it. And this is maybe something we don't focus enough on as EasyBuild maintainers and developers. So this is clearly the core aspect of it. While the software we support in EasyBuild is only responsible for about 7% of convincing people to start using it. So we spend a lot of our time on processing pull requests and adding yet another software package to EasyBuild so it can be easily installed. Maybe we should rethink that a bit and shift our focus or bring our focus back a bit to the core functionality of EasyBuild and making that better, because it seems like this could have more impact than just adding a couple more supported software packages. One thing I'm a bit, well, unhappy is a strong word, but a bit disappointed about is that the EasyBuild community only gets a small share of the pie here. So I think a big value of EasyBuild is also the community around it. All the people that put their effort and time into it, and how easy it is through the EasyBuild community to get help also with issues related not directly to EasyBuild in the same area, let's say. So that seems to be underappreciated. Then if we look at the operating systems that EasyBuild is being used on, so here also we have a bit of historical data. We see that CentOS 6 is now finally almost gone. There's actually about 5% of people still say they're using it on CentOS 6, even though that has been end of life for well over a year now. CentOS 7 is still most popular. There's no surprise there. It's slowly going down, of course, since there's CentOS 8 and RHEL 8 and all these variants. So people are starting to migrate to more recent operating systems, even though the CentOS 7 end of life is still quite a long time away. So sticking to CentOS 7 is probably still okay for most things. Now, the funny thing here is, of course, the situation with CentOS 8, where we started seeing adoption to CentOS 8 in 2020, 2021. That's actually going down already, and that's not a surprise because the end of life for CentOS 8 is already behind us. So the end of last year is when they stopped publishing updates for CentOS 8 because all the development basically has moved to CentOS 8 Stream. which is not really a good fit in an HPC context. That's like a rolling release sort of thing, a bit similar to Fedora, but not exactly the same. The devil is in the details there. So people are starting to look for alternatives. And the new kid on the block here, well, there's actually two new kids on the block, I would say. Rocky Linux is certainly very new. That's supposed to be the continuation of CentOS 8 as it was before. And we see that jumping to 40%, while last year it was basically not there yet. It didn't really exist. There's other alternatives next to Rocky Linux, like Alma Linux, which has already been there for a while, and which is being adopted by other communities as an alternative to CentOS 8. But it seems like in the HPC community, or certainly not in the EasyBuild community, it's actively picked up as an alternative. So the focus seems to be on Rocky Linux. So that's also interesting to note here. And then, of course, yeah, we also see the jump to RHEL 7, RHEL 8, so the commercial versions of that. Then next to Red Hat-based operating systems, there's also others, of course. Ubuntu, Debian are, let's say, the next big family of Linux distributions. This is a bit jumpy left and right. I'm not very familiar with this ecosystem, but it seems like lots of people have jumped to Ubuntu 20.04, which I guess is a long-term release. And then it's really scattered among the other versions, what people are using. So I guess people are experimenting with more recent versions, and maybe it's still a bit too early to really jump to the next long-term release and so on. Usage of Debian is still there, but rather low, so sub 5%. That's definitely in the noise. And then there's other operating systems as well next to Ubuntu, Debian. You can see those on the right. So that's / Enterprise, SUSE Linux Enterprise Edition, or / and OpenSUSE. So interestingly enough, OpenSUSE is increasing quite a bit. It's still sub 5%, but there's an upward trend there, and I'm not quite sure where that comes from. So that's interesting. There's a bigger jump for Gentoo, and I guess that's mostly people in Compute Canada and active in the Easy project who indicated they are using Gentoo. macOS is close to nowhere. There's no surprise there. EasyBuild mostly works on macOS, but the Easy Configs will not. So you'll have to do a lot of work to get something big in terms of software stack with EasyBuild. And Gray is still there, gradually going down, but that could just be because less people who are working on Gray systems are filling out the survey. So we're talking sub 5%, so it's very difficult to make any big conclusions from this. But overall, yeah, quite interesting, and it's good to have this historical data and see where things are going. So things are mostly making sense, I would say. Then sort of coupled to that is the Python version. So usually people use the default Python version that comes with the operating system to run EasyBuild. No surprise, and I would say also a good thing is that the usage of Python 2.7 is going down. So Python 2.7 is end of life since end of 2020, even though they did another, actually end of life January 1st, 2020, so quite a long time ago already now, even though they had another bug fix release in April 2020, so that's an interesting strategy. But yeah, it's dead and buried, let's say, so people should stop using it. That's also clear, so we see it gradually going down. EasyBuild has been compatible with Python 3 for a while now, so adoption of Python 3 is increasing. And last year, 2021, is actually the first time where we have more people using Python 3 to run EasyBuild than we have people using Python 2. So in the year before, Python 2.7 was still at 46%. Now it's at 35%, so Python 3 is having the upper hand here. About half, 44% of the community is using Python 3.6. That's the default Python in many operating systems, in CentOS 8, for example. The interesting part here is that this is already considered an obsolete version by the Python developers. So they stopped maintaining Python 3.6. But for EasyBuild, that's currently the most important version to be aware of. There's no Python 3.10 here yet because EasyBuild was not compatible with it yet. That's actually fixed in the latest release, which we pushed out today. which hasn't been announced yet, but it's already there. You can start playing with it. If you want to run EasyBuild on top of Python 3.10, you can do so starting today. Then we removed support for Python 2.6 relatively recently. So it was deprecated since end of 2019, but we also we only actively removed support for using EasyBuild on top of Python 2.6 in June of last year. So that's quite recent. Based on these results, nobody was really still having problems with not supporting Python 2.6. So it seems like the timing we did there was quite well. And the impact of dropping support for Python 2.6 is relatively minor in terms of code base. So we stretched that maybe a bit too long. But yeah, it seems like we didn't have any negative impact here on the EasyBuild community. That's very good. As far as I know, SPAC still supports running on top of Python 2.6, and I'm not sure what their plans are there going forward. But yeah, we got rid of it, and I think that's a good. Then the next thing that comes in focus, of course, is Python 2.7. It's end of life, so should we still support it? How problematic would that be for the EasyBuild community? So right now, about, let's say, 15% of people would still consider that a problem. Now, I'm not sure how much of them would actually have any big issues with not being able to get the Python 3 version working on their OS. There's usually packages for that, and it's just a yum install away, let's say. So maybe we should actively start thinking about deprecating support for Python 2.7. So people get a strong warning about moving on to Python 3, and then perhaps an EasyBuild version 5, which we currently don't have any concrete plans for yet. We can drop support for Python 2.7. So that's worth considering. That's something, I guess, for the maintainers also that we should discuss. At what point do we think this makes sense? Based on the current Python 2.7 usage, so we still have about, what was it? Yeah, let's say a third of the community is still using Python 2.7. That would mean if we start spitting deprecation warnings at them, that would be a lot of people. So maybe that's a bit early. On the other hand, if you don't deprecate it, people will not move on. So yeah, we have to see what our best way forward is there. Short story here, we're actively thinking about deprecating support for Python 2.7 first, and then dropping the support, let's say maybe about a year from now. We'll probably be at that stage. Yeah, this is just a repeat from a slide I had last year as well. If you want to use Python 3 already to run EasyBuild, you can check our documentation that talks about Python 2 and 3 compatibility. EasyBuild will still pick up the Python command, so the default Python command first, and if it can run EasyBuild with that command, it will. But you can tell it otherwise through the EB Python environment variable. You can specify which Python version should be used. Or if you're happy with the default where it looks at the Python command first, followed by Python 3 and then Python 2 as a last resort, that's okay as well. So that means you can opt in using Python 3 already and making sure you won't be hit by any of the deprecation issues that we are planning to do. Then another new survey question is looking at how big the systems are that people are running EasyBuild on. So here there's also a big bag of, yeah, let's say a mixed bag of replies. Some people are using quite small systems, even less than 100 cores. Let's say the majority of people is somewhere between 1,000 and 20,000 cores. So that's probably a moderate HPC system nowadays. It's not terribly big, but certainly big enough to be a headache to maintain and support. And then upward from that, over 20 cores, we're talking the last quarter, let's say, of the EasyBuild community. So the good thing here is EasyBuild is used both on big and small systems. So it seems like we're able to help lots of people there. That's very good. Then we also asked whether you're using EasyBuild on a system that's currently in the top 500. So just to have a better view, let's say, on the higher end of the scale. So people were able to say yes and not provide any details if they didn't want to. That's okay. About 14% of people did that. And about 11% of people did give details about the top 500 system they are using. And this is, let's say the usual suspects are there: Jülich, Compute Canada, Max Planck. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't really know it was actively being used. Also, it's not clear here whether this is system administrators or end users. So it could be a single user using EasyBuild to self-manage his software stack, their software stack on one of these systems, or it could be sysadmins and using it to deploy the central software stack. We didn't make that distinction, but it seems like we have good usage all throughout the top 500, even at the top. So that's also very good. What's also important to mention here is that the vast majority of people is not working on a top 500 system. So if we do anything, any improvements in EasyBuild to help the top tier systems, we have to realize we're sort of helping only a small part of the community. So that's very important to realize. Then another traditional question is looking at which CPUs people are compiling software with, or compiling software for, using EasyBuild rather. This is only looking at Intel CPUs here. Otherwise, it's way too messy to look at the results. But it's clear that Intel Skylake is still the most popular Intel CPU currently. It's slowly going down, and I see a downward trend for most of the Intel CPUs, with the exception of Cascade Lake and Ice Lake, so the most recent ones. All the other ones are not in a steep decline, but slowly going down. What's also interesting here is that we still see a significant amount of Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge. So I think these are systems from about 9, 8, maybe 10 years ago, which are still in use, it seems. So 20% is quite significant, I would say. Then the newer systems are on the rise, of course, there's no surprise there. And even older stuff than Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge is still at 15%. So that's also quite high. So people are trying to keep their very old systems alive for their users. Then the non-Intel results, of course, AMD is back in the game here, and well back in the game. AMD Rome has crossed over 40% of the people responding to the survey, and AMD Milan and Milan X are on the rise as well. So that's of course why lots of the Intel CPUs are going down, because a lot of that usage is shifting towards AMD. And actually AMD Rome is now second only after Intel Skylake for the first time. So that's interesting as well. Then on the bottom right, we see the usage of other CPUs, so non-x86, so Power 9 and ARM currently. This is, let's say, on the low end in terms of usage, 10% or close to 10% at best with Power 9, and actually going down. There's a bit of an increase for ARM, so A64FX, and ARM Thunder X2 is slowly increasing a bit, so there's a bit more attention there, but we're talking only about 5% of users currently. There's nobody running EasyBuild on RISC-V yet, and actually in the last EasyBuild release, we made a small enhancement to start supporting that. So EasyBuild is now aware of RISC-V. It notices when it's running on a RISC-V CPU. And I did a quick try compiling some simple stuff with EasyBuild on RISC-V, and that was actually working. So there's nothing really fundamentally broken in EasyBuild to start compiling software for RISC-V. That's very good. So things like Python and stuff like that is already working fine on RISC-V. That's interesting. Then we asked the same questions for GPUs. So how many GPUs do people have? Only a small portion, I would say, and it's a bit sad we don't have any historical results on this, because I think a couple of years ago this was very different. But yeah, less than 10% has no GPUs at all. So that means, yeah, the vast majority does have at least some GPUs. Most have, let's say, less than 100 GPUs, so a quite modest amount. These things are quite expensive, of course, so that's probably not a big surprise. And then we have a couple of whales that have over 1,000 GPUs or more in their systems. That's about 10% of the EasyBuild community. In types of GPUs, of course, NVIDIA here is still king by far. We're seeing a shift from the Volta V100 GPUs to the higher end Ampere GPUs, so A30 and mostly A100. The older types, Kepler, Maxwell, Pascal, are slowly being phased out. So these are probably not powerful enough anymore for any of the big GPU workloads we're seeing nowadays. There's certainly exceptions. And then the other types of NVIDIA GPUs, so RTX, Quadro, T4, and so on, are seeing less usage. Of course, the newer types there are still seeing a decent amount, so over 10%. We did ask about AMD and Intel GPUs as well in the survey, but everything there was well below 5%, so it's not really worth showing that in a graph without giving an impression of things blowing up. We expect that to change going forward. Of course, Lumi is a big system there that will definitely have impact. So that's going to be interesting to watch in 2022, how that's going. Then if we ask how long people have been using EasyBuild already, this is probably a duplicate. We already had this, right? Yeah, we already had this graph. This is a duplicate slide. I'm sorry about that. This is the question here is wrong. It's actually asking which EasyBuild version are people using currently. So the vast majority of people is keeping up with the latest versions. Latest version, well, released today is EasyBuild 4.5.2, but we didn't properly announce that yet, so not that many people will be using it. But over 60% of people were basically following along with the latest releases. So that's very good. Only a very small minority is still stuck on EasyBuild 3 for some reason, even though the backwards incompatible changes that we did make in EasyBuild 4 were rather minimal, and it's well documented how to get around them. But maybe people got stuck in a corner by the customizations they made themselves. And overall, yeah, the graph on the left looks a bit messy, of course, because people are just jumping from version to version. So these peaks you see are a bit strange, but nothing really surprising here. There's also a small part and a stable part. On the left graph, the pink line shows the people using develop. That's sub 10%. So that's probably mostly EasyBuild maintainers who are closely following the developments that are happening. But it's very important for EasyBuild maintainers to realize that's not how most of the EasyBuild community is using EasyBuild. So that difference in view or in usage is very important. That also means that whatever is in develop currently is not in the hands of 90% of the community. So making EasyBuild releases is very important, clearly, and we need to make sure we do that frequently enough. Reasons for not using the latest release. Some people just, current version works fine, or I don't really have time to upgrade, or don't have a strong need to upgrade, I guess. There's a bit of a drop here in terms of people using the latest version. So people are more stuck for time than in previous years. So with the current state of the world, that's probably not a huge surprise. So that may be a factor there. But let's say there's very little good reasons or things that we could improve as EasyBuild developers to make sure that people are using the latest release. It's just, let's say, out of choice that most people are not actively following or not actively keeping up with EasyBuild versions. So looking back at some of the highlights for EasyBuild, the more general highlights in the last year. So we still see a growth in the EasyBuild community and a quite persistent growth. And some of the stats on pull requests will make that very clear towards the end. So we have more users than before, more contributions than before by more contributors, and so on. So there's the continued growth there, and the feeling that we're mostly managing to keep up with those contributions, even though we're certainly building up a bit of a backlog of pull requests. We're still doing quite okay, I would say, with keeping up with the incoming contributions. We now have over 2,500 supported software packages, so we crossed that milestone last year, and that's about a 20% increase in the last year alone. So that number is actually quite scary. That has been a pretty stable increase over the last couple of years. So every year we're adding about 20% more supported software, and of course, the more supported software packages you have, the more difficult it becomes to make sure that nothing breaks and that you're maintaining things well. So this is a big challenge going forward. We had some EasyBuild Tech Talks as well. I'll get back to that later. And of course, as already made clear by the previous talk, EasyBuild was selected as a software installation tool for Lumi, which is a very nice result after many years of active development and community engagement. So we're very happy with that. We also have a dedicated tutorial for the Lust team, and that will come back later. For the EasyBuild tutorial, that's another highlight. So last year, well, I would say in 2020, we submitted a tutorial for ISC, which was accepted, but then the tutorials at ISC ended up not happening because of the pandemic. We went ahead and did a self-organized tutorial anyway, since we had the tutorial material mostly prepared. So we went fully online with that, and an open tutorial anyone could join. We had over 100 registrations, and that helped a lot with improving the tutorial for ISC last year, ISC 21. So that was the tutorials that were accepted for ISC 20 were just carried over to ISC 21. So we had our first official tutorial at an ISC or SE conference, so one of the bigger HPC conferences. It was a half-day tutorial. Here we had 25 to 30 attendees, and this is a paid tutorial essentially. So you had to register for ISC and pay to join ISC to be able to join the tutorial. But compared to some other tutorials that barely got any attendees, so we're talking 5-6 people actually joining the tutorials, this is a quite good result. So we were among the better attended tutorials at this virtual ISC conference. All the tutorials materials are online, so through the links there on the slide, and also the recording of the ISC 21 tutorial is fully online on YouTube and linked as a part of the tutorial pages. So if you want to revisit that and see the tutorial and basically get a good introduction to EasyBuild, that's probably the best resource we currently have. We've also resubmitted this tutorial for ISC 22, and we're going to expand a bit. So our idea is to make it a full day tutorial and also explain how EasyBuild is being used in Jülich at Lumi and also as a part of the Easy project. So we're a bit more ambitious there. And we'll see if they accept this tutorial or if we can fall back to a half-day one like we did last year. In terms of supported software, so this line is starting to scare me a bit. It's going up. It keeps going up mostly at the same rate as in previous years. The small dip we have there around 2019 is because that's when EasyBuild 4.0 was released. And then we tried to get rid of some old junk that's not really relevant anymore. So we had a bit of a dip there in terms of supported software packages. But overall, this is a straight line, linearly increasing over time. And this is, of course, a concern going forward. We're now hitting 2,500 different software packages, excluding versions, and also excluding extensions. So things like Python packages or R libraries that we install as a part of something else are not included in this count. I did a rough count for extensions, and it's mostly, again, so you can mostly double the number of supported software if you also take into account extensions. This is a maintenance issue going forward, but it's something we'll have to deal with. I don't think we have a good reason to say no to some software packages. The scientific software ecosystem is just becoming more and more diverse. more different tools popping up left and right that people actually want to use. And it's something we have to deal with. Worth noting here is that about 1/3 of all the software we have in terms of unique software names, unique software packages, is bioinformatics. So all of these things are tagged with bio as module class. So that's all in the bioinformatics realm. And then another 25%, so if you combine the lib and the tools, the categories, that's another quarter of the software. And then it's a big splintering across different communities or scientific fields. In terms of tool chains, so this was a fun one to analyze, lots of details here. First of all, to focus on the FOSS common tool chain, so the open source common tool chains, we see rather quick uptake on new FOSS releases. So if we define let's say the 2021A, 2021B tool chains, they are already both picked up quite well by the community. Over 35 and over 50% of the community is already using them. So the efforts we do there to try and come up with very recent versions of compilers and libraries, but making sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot too much and cause trouble when using these tool chains. So that's a bit of a balance act, but it seems like that's very well appreciated by the community. So that's very good. The older versions are rather sticky. So 2019A is still being used by about 35% of the community. That's rather a lot, I would say, for a toolchain that old. And an important thing to mention here is that we've deprecated versions 2018B and older. So right now they're still supported, they will still work, but we're basically getting short on time to make sure we don't make any breaking changes by accident in these toolchains. So we're still trying to avoid that. But we're less actively testing that than before. And we'll probably actively drop support for that, or at least make it very clear that we're no longer testing and using those in the next major version of EasyBuild and EasyBuild 5. So yeah, so there's a big, let's say about a quarter of the community is still using these old tool chains. And that's an attention point right there. Then for the CUDA variant of FOSS, so FOSS in combination with CUDA, we made a change there for the 2021 tool chains. We've split this up a bit in some sense. So where before we had a FOSS CUDA tool chain, which includes an open API that's CUDA aware, we've now pulled this apart a bit. So we can use the traditional FOSS tool chain and just add CUDA as a dependency. While still having a CUDA-aware MPI by just pulling things apart a bit and working with some kind of plugin for UCX. That's a lot better because then all the FOSS easy configs can also be used in a CUDA in a GPU context. And that actually leads to less easy config files to maintain and to develop. Looking at the Intel toolchain, so the scales here are purposely kept the same. You can see the community, less of the community is using Intel toolchains. I actually expect this to go up a bit since now there's no licensing cost anymore for using the Intel compilers and Intel tools. So for the recent versions, Intel 2021A and 2021B, we may see more adoption than we have seen before. So let's see how that goes going forward. Also here, about 70% is still using a version of the Intel toolchain that's now deprecated in EasyBuild. And yeah, the combination of Intel and CUDA is rather low. That's probably not a big surprise. Other toolchains, so here I filtered things down, only looking at toolchains that are used by more than 5% of the community. The big winner here, I guess, is EUM'22. So that's Intel compilers combined with OpenMPI and Intel MKL. So that's used quite well. Yeah, around 20%, 15% of the community is using some version of that. So that's quite good. The results here are a bit difficult to interpret because we changed the EUM'22 answer in the survey to specific versions of EUM'22, and you can't really add those because people can pick multiple answers. So that makes it a bit difficult to interpret. But it's clear that it's one of the other big tool chains in the community as well. What's also important to note is that NVHPC is being used quite well. That's not a toolchain really managed by EasyBuild itself. It's a single package essentially. But yeah, on all those GPU systems, it seems like lots of people are starting to use that as well. Gray is remarkably stable. I would say that's probably mostly CSCS, and Lumi will probably start using custom toolchains for Gray as well. How frequently should the common toolchains, so FOSS and Intel, be updated? This is pretty stable and actually going up a bit. So we're doing updating these toolchains twice a year, and it seems like the community is starting to be more and more happy with that frequency, with less people saying it should only be once a year, and more people saying it's good as it is now. So yeah, nothing really to learn here. That's quite good. How many software installations people are using? This is maybe less interesting. Some people only do a handful. Some people do a lot. And there's a big difference here between different sites. So very difficult to draw any big conclusions from this, I would say. And how many software installations do people have currently in production? Also here, very mixed view. Just over half has less than 1,000 modules installed with EasyBuild. Maybe I'm projecting, but I consider this low. So 1,000 modules installed over time in total on all your systems combined. That may be a bit low, but maybe also people were misinterpreting the question a bit or not paying attention enough. I'm not sure. Anyway, however many modules you have installed, it doesn't really matter if it's just a handful or 10,000. As long as you're using EasyBuild, we're happy, of course. And this is also mostly stable. Are people only using EasyBuild or also other tools? And Gantt, we're definitely in the camp of the green camp here. Yes, no exceptions, which seems to be a minority. So some people do make some exceptions or resort probably to manual installations as well, next to EasyBuild for things not supported or for things that they know really well. They either do manual or grab other tools that maybe have better support for some packages. But overall, yeah, a pretty good result here as well, and pretty stable over the years. Yeah, still manual installations. Some people definitely still do that, probably for software they're most familiar with, or where they don't get the control from EasyBuild that they would like to have. And also here, very stable. Here's a new question for this survey, with sort of a hidden intention that we want to promote EasyBuild a bit as also a tool for end users. So as Kurt also mentioned in the Lumi talk, we think this is a very important aspect of EasyBuild, where people can use it on top of a central software stack, and it's quite easy to do so. Only about 35% of people are using this or are aware of their users using this. So this can maybe go up or should go up in the next couple of years. Maybe we have to promote this a bit more as one of the possible use cases of EasyBuild. Then looking at the EasyConfig files that people use, here again, remarkably stable. The ones included in EasyBuild are used by about 90% of the community. So we spend a lot of effort there as EasyBuild maintainers, and it seems like that's being well used. A lot of people, about 70%, also create their own EasyConfigs. And if I look at the contributions to EasyBuild, so looking at those numbers, about 50% of those also contributes back those EasyConfigs. So some people are creating EasyConfigs, not really contributing them back, which is okay, but the vast majority is doing that. And some people are also pulling EasyConfigs from the let's say, not the central EasyBuild repositories, but others. We didn't ask which ones, but some that I'm definitely aware of is the ones in Jülich at CSCS and Compute Canada. There's probably more, and maybe we should have a curated list or a full list of places where people can go look for EasyConfigs. And maybe, as I mentioned, We should do a bit more work on EasyBuild framework. Maybe we should add some features in there that make it a lot easier to also pick up easy config files from other places. How long are modules installed? Or how long are modules available, let's say. So most people really don't have a good lifecycle management of their installations. They just install and it stays there as long as the system is there. So maybe there's a lot of room here for improvement as well. I'm not sure if there's a lot we can do in EasyBuild here. Maybe this is mostly a documentation thing. And let's say this is more on the side of LMOD probably. So once the software is installed, it's sort of out of the hands of EasyBuild and it's being pushed to the modules tool. But it seems like there's a lot of room for growth and improvements here. In terms of module naming scheme, most people just stick to the default. Still, this has been pretty stable over the years, about 60%. And what struck me here is that we see a decline for hierarchical module naming scheme after a couple of years of slowly going up. So it seems like people have been trying this and are maybe not happy with it and are reverting back to the default naming scheme. Maybe I'm overinterpreting these results, but that could be one possible conclusion of the numbers we see here. What does strike me is that only a very small amount of EasyBuild users take full control over the module naming scheme. This was for a long time not properly documented, how you could do this or what the trade-offs are. That's also why I added the link to the EasyBuild tutorial at the bottom, where we explain really well what the difference is between a flat naming scheme like the default EasyBuild one, or a hierarchical naming scheme, or how to design your own module naming scheme. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely take a look at the EasyBuild tutorial. Then mailing list and Slack. Are people subscribed to the mailing list? There's still a significant amount of people who are subscribed at least, but maybe be a bit passive, only reading the posts, and only a very small amount is actually actively participating in discussions. I think we also see this on the mailing list. There's a lot less activity than there is before. There's actually an increase in passive participation, so people stay subscribed to the mailing list, but are not really helping out others or posting questions themselves there. So it's going down, but it's still an important communication channel. Also, if you see that you're getting more participation in the survey through the mailing list, that still shows that that's a quite important channel that we should definitely keep open and keep paying attention to. If you're not subscribed to the mailing list yet, you can find the link here at the bottom of the slide and also in the EasyBuild documentation. Yeah, this is looking at the traffic. This is still going down quite significantly actually in the last year. So people are more and more shifting towards Slack and less to the mailing list. Then the Slack channel, it mentions IRC. The IRC channel is still there, but there's only a handful of people, I think less than 10 there, so it's not really relevant. But since 2019, we see increased adoption of the EasyBuild Slack channel, or increased participation there. A quite steep increase of people joining Slack and also actively joining Slack. So we see questions being raised there more and more, and which are also being followed up quite well, I think. I think 90% or so of questions being asked in Slack is also being answered. That's very different on the mailing list, I think. I didn't look at the numbers, but there's probably mails flying through there that are not really being answered at all, which is a bit unfortunate. And in the Slack channel, we've gradually moved to using these Slack threads to keep things a bit organized. That more or less happened by itself because it was getting busy enough that it was clear that this was going to be necessary. Also here to join the EasyBuild Slack, easybuild.io/join Slack, and you can self-request an invitation to join. This is the message volume, or at least the weekly active members, let's say, in Slack. So it's slowly increasing. Yeah, not everyone. So we have over, what are the numbers here? We have over 500 people currently in the Slack channel. So that's also a milestone we hit last year. Not everyone there is actually actively posting things or even actively logged in and paying attention. So the 500 number is definitely skewed a bit, but this is definitely the most active channel we have in terms of getting help with EasyBuild. And then the EasyBuild documentation is of course also very important. Over the years, people have been very happy with this. And there's even a shift towards being more happy with it. So more people are saying it's very complete, and a bit less people are saying it's very complete. So this is being let's say accepted more and more positively. So almost 80% is very positive about the EasyBuild documentation. I've said this before in previous years, we're aware of some gaps in there, but I think the EasyBuild tutorial has actually filled some of those gaps. And that's maybe why we see this shift in people being more happy with the EasyBuild documentation. So documentation and tutorial here are maybe a bit mixed in terms of how people answer the survey. How often do people consult the documentation? Yeah, the majority does it about once a month or so. Some people more frequently than that, but it's clear that this is being used quite a lot, and it's an important resource of EasyBuild help and information. And how useful is it? Yeah, it's clear. It's very useful to most people. So again, very important. And also here, the usefulness is increasing a bit. And that's probably also an effect of the EasyBuild tutorial that's relatively new. Then specifically for the tutorial, this is a new question. Do people know about it? Luckily, the majority of people do. Now, I added this question on purpose because it's a bit scattered how you can find the EasyBuild tutorial. We didn't have this short link for a while. There was no link from the EasyBuild documentation into the tutorial, for example, only from the website. So it wasn't very clear. Maybe we didn't do a very good job at promoting the tutorial. And a significant part of people still is not aware of it. So we need to do a better job there. But the people who are aware of it, either follow it through as intended, so either live or with the recording and the website, or some people only use the website, step through it, and see if it helps them. Quite a big number of people, about a third, thinks it wouldn't be very helpful for them because they're probably already familiar enough with EasyBuild, even though there's some things in there, like hooks, for example, or a custom module naming scheme that we explain in great detail. So maybe you should take a look anyway and see there may be a couple of things still to learn in there. I also had at least a bullet point on this last year. We have some plans to revamp the documentation a bit, mostly to reformat it and switch to a new tool. So the current documentation is in the restructured text format .rst. We're rendering that using Sphinx on the Read the Docs website. We would very much like to move that to MKDocs and Markdown, and maybe also move the documentation into its own dedicated repository, sort of as an effort to attract some more attention to it and get some more help with with completing the documentation and adding documentation on new features and so on. And also because RST is a bit of an exception in the EasyBuild community currently. Everything else is really in Markdown format. In GitHub, for example, if you do any formatting there in issues or pull requests or the wiki, everything is Markdown. And also the EasyBuild tutorial is already using MKDocs, so that's also in Markdown. So having everything in Markdown would facilitate things quite a bit. And also MKDocs and especially the material team for MKDocs is also very nice. So just for that reason, it would already make sense to do this. This is not a small effort, of course. It will take a bit of time and a bit of effort because but it's a one-time pain, and I really hope we find the time to do this in the coming year. Then back to the survey. Any other tools or projects that people are combining with EasyBuild? Of course, the modules tool, which is a hard dependency for EasyBuild, is a big one here. So I focused on that a bit first. Looking at LMOD and environment modules, LMOD is the clear winner. The latest major version of LMOD, LMOD 8.x, is getting the most adoption here. There's a small decline in the last year, and it seems like that is being stolen a bit by the new environment modules version 5, although it's only a small portion, about 5%. So Xavier will be talking about the modules version 5 this week with a dedicated talk, so maybe he can explain why people should consider jumping back, I would say, to the modules too. Maybe there's a good reason for that. About 4% of people is still using LMOD 6. For a long time, that was the default version in Debian and Ubuntu. That's changing now because Alexander from Jülich has picked up the maintenance of the LMOD package in Debian and Ubuntu. So now you can also very easily there get an LMOD 8 version. And that's probably going to have some impact here as well. And yeah, what struck me quite a bit is that the purple line here is the old environment modules 3, and that's apparently still being used by about 10% of the community. So I consider that very big for a version that hasn't seen any love for many years already. Then other tools next to the modules tool, the biggest one here is Singularity, probably not a big surprise. For next year, we'll have to add Apptainer here as well. There's actually 2 versions of Singularity. It was forked a while ago. I didn't make that distinction here, probably should have. But yeah, it's one of the bigger tools next to the modules tool being used in conjunction with EasyBuild or probably on the side. Conda is quite big as well. Yeah, not a big fan of Conda myself, but it's clearly still useful to lots of people for certain things. Only a very small minority is combining EasyBuild and SPAC, about 8%, and that seems to be pretty stable over the years. So either there's no good use case to use both, or only a small amount of people is interested in that. And then we see a small increase in usage of things like Gentoo prefix and reframe. Rich, so with the new EasyBuild integration that we have with Rich, is also being picked up slowly. Then focusing a bit more on the changes we have made in EasyBuild in the last year. So I collected these bullet points by scrolling through the release notes and picking up the most important things. There was a big improvement in the speed of EasyBuild itself when it parses easyconfig files and sets up everything, sets up the build environment and things like that. That was improved quite a bit. That's under the covers. You don't really see that directly, but if EasyBuild feels a bit faster than it does before, that's thanks to these efforts. We've also added an automatic fallback source URL to the EasyBuild website, essentially, or at least the subdomain of that. So whenever EasyBuild tries to download something and it fails, it will also consider this as a potential location to download from. And that's because we park things there that have disappeared upstream, but which are still relevant to the EasyBuild community. So whenever we can, whenever it's open source and the license allow it, and it's no longer available somewhere else, we park it there and EasyBuild automatically picks it up. A couple of small but nice enhancements is the support for only running a sanity check. So that's for existing installations, existing modules. You can ask EasyBuild, please run the sanity check and check whether this thing still works, if there's any sanity check commands being used, or that the necessary files that definitely should be there are still there. That's maybe useful to run after maintenance, for example, to have a very quick check whether nothing is blatantly broken. That could be very useful. After lots of requests for something like this, there's now a dedicated option to not install any extensions at all, which I can imagine for R can be very useful to first have the bare R installation and then start adding extensions to it gradually. So that was a bit of a pain before. That's now a lot easier. And the new FOSS toolchains starting with 2021A, we're no longer including OpenBLAS directly as a toolchain component. We have switched this to FlexiBLAS. OpenBLAS is still used as a backend for FlexiBLAS, next to Bliss and potentially MKL as well. And that just gives you the runtime flexibility to either use OpenBLAS or switch to another library like Bliss without having to recompile in it. As I already mentioned, for FOSS CUDA, the latest versions of FOSS plus CUDA are no longer FOSS CUDA, but are FOSS with a CUDA dependency on the side. And if you really need an CUDA-aware OpenMPI, we do that through UCX and a separate plugin for that. Another small but very useful feature for EasyBuild is to let it check the available dependencies. It will check the Python version and the modules tool, but also lots of these optional dependencies like rich or Git Python or all these things that it needs only for certain features. It will give a nice overview of what it could find and which versions if they are available. And then two other enhancements, which I'll explain a bit more about, is the rich output style. That includes progress bars and the support for installing extensions in parallel. So starting with rich, when EasyBuild is being run with Python 3 and the rich Python package is installed, so that's basically just pip3 install rich. That's all you need to do. So EasyBuild tries to import that. If it's there, it will produce a more rich output on the command line. And that includes progress bars for whenever it's downloading big files, or whenever it's installing extensions, which takes a while. It will give you a detailed overview of how well that's progressing, what has been done already, and so on. And in some cases, like when downloading files, it can also give an estimate of how long things will still take. So that's very easy to adopt. As soon as you have rich installed, you will see this other output style popping up. You can also disable it even if I have rich installed. So all details on that are in the documentation. And we hope or we'll try to use this in more places than we are currently. There's lots of options that you can still do with rich to produce a bit more colorful or useful output. And that's probably or hopefully something we will look into in the coming year as well. Then another one which has been in the works for quite a long time, or certainly talked about for quite a long time, is support for installing extensions in parallel. So that's mostly for the big motivator here was R, where we now include over 1,000 R packages as extensions into R itself. And those are being installed one by one sequentially. Even on a system with say 100 cores, you're really only using a single core to install all these extensions. That has changed. EasyBuild has become a lot smarter here. It can check what the dependencies are for each of those R packages, and it can figure out when something is ready to be installed, and then also launch multiple of these installations in parallel at the same time. So that way it can try to use all the available cores to speed up these installations quite a bit. That worked quite well on let's say a 10-core system. You're probably seeing a speed up of 6 or 7. The more cores you have available, of course, there's a wall you hit with the amount of parallelism that's available in here, but still the R installation especially becomes quite a bit faster with this. This is currently still an experimental feature because we know there's some things that do not work yet. One big thing is it doesn't work for the bioconductor bundle at this point because EasyBuild is not taking into account extensions installed in other modules yet. So that's an important thing to fix. And something we also want to do is, especially for Python, also add support for installing Python extensions in parallel. That's a lot trickier for Python because there's no easy way to determine what the dependencies are of a particular Python package. And so you can check whether these are installed already. So that's something we have to figure out what the best way would be to do that. But once we have that handled, all the other machinery is already in place. Just as it is in R. So it's implemented in a way that as soon as you know how to extract dependencies for a given extension, then everything else just works out of the box. And yeah, we have dedicated documentation on this as well to explain what it does, how you can use it, and what the current limitations are. Looking at EasyBuild features, so I didn't make a comparison here with previous years because the type of question changed in the last survey. People can now pick multiple answers, but even then the robot option, so enabling dependency resolution, gets the most votes here. Things like GitHub integration, hooks, distributing installations on a cluster, and the rich output style, so that's quite new. All of these are getting 20–30% of votes, which I consider rather low. So I would hope that more people appreciate these features and also use them. Maybe they're not aware of them enough. So maybe we need to make a bit more noise about these things, but these are very powerful features that you should definitely take a look into. The frequency of EasyBuild releases. This has been slowly going down a bit. So back in 2017, we had 10 releases of EasyBuild in that year. Last year, we only had 7 releases. That's probably because we have less time than before to do very frequent releases. But if we look at how people like the current frequency of releases, more and more people are happy with it. So I would say maybe before we were releasing too frequently, and now we've sort of hit a sweet spot where most people are happy with what we do. So we shouldn't try to bring this back up to 10 if the community is happy what we're currently doing. So right now we have a new EasyBuild release about every 7 to 8 weeks on average, and that's probably a good frequency. Commercial support, this is very jumpy over the years. It seems to be shifting towards less people actually being interested in commercial support. Although there's still about 25% that says, maybe we would be interested to get some help by consultants or things like this. And one of the side talks this week is by the Inuit consultancy firm where we and Ghent have been working with. So they have been helping us out with software installations in EasyBuild. That has been working out quite well. So maybe that's an option that more sites should consider as well. And then the usual, looking at contributors. So I can't resist always including this clip. I'm very sorry about that. Looking at contributions over the years. So first into EasyBuild framework. A bit jumpy left and right. Depends a lot on whether we're working on new features or if people have ideas for new features. There was a peak in 2019 that was because we were porting EasyBuild to Python 3 then, so that was a lot of work. But since then, it's maybe a bit less active than before. The good news here is that currently about 60% of all pull requests into framework are done outside of our team. So other than me, and I'm including the Inuit consultants in that as well. So that's very good, I would say. So that's an increasing number of contributions or changes to the core of EasyBuild, not done by us. For Easy Blocks, more pull requests, of course, than for framework. A bit less than last year. I'm not sure if there's a good reason for the peak last year. I don't think there is, but we're still getting well over 250 pull requests per year in the last year. So that's about 1 per working day, let's say, on average. So that's quite good. And here, over 75% of pull requests are not done by the HPC Ghent team. And about 40% of those are not even done by an EasyBuild maintainer, but an outside contributor. And that's probably a very good number as well. So not just the core maintainers are helping out, but lots of other people are as well. Then for easy configs, this is of course where most of the activity is. Last year, we were just short of 2,500 pull requests for easy config files in a single year. That's of course quite a lot, and I'm not sure when this is going to peak, or if it's going to peak, or if we'll just have to deal with more and more incoming contributions. Certainly in the last couple of weeks, we've built up a bit of a backlog there, and we'll work hard to make sure we can bring that down again and that we can keep up with incoming contributions. But we'll have to make an effort there, probably another merge sprint or a good discussion among the maintainers how we can bring this down again and deal with all of these things. So this has been going up and up and up over the years. Some of this is self-inflicted, I would say, thanks to the GitHub integration. So that makes it very easy to open pull requests straight from the EasyBuild command line. Maybe it's too easy and we're getting lots of contributions because of that. But we also want to get contributions, of course. We get help from lots of contributors. yeah, both non-maintainers and people outside of HPC UGent, this is increasing rapidly. And over the years, you can sort of see my pull requests going down, which I consider a good thing. So I'm opening less pull requests probably because other people are stealing the work from me. That's very good. If we then look at, so basically the same graph, but coloring a bit differently. So who's merging those pull requests? Also here, my involvement is slowly dropping a bit. So I actually did still about 500 pull requests last year. So that's about 2 per working day on average, which is, let's say, enough. But yeah, maintainers are starting to take over that work more and more. So as these numbers grow, my involvement sort of stays stable. So on average, it's going down. That's a good thing. And yeah, the vast majority of pull requests is being opened through the new PR feature, which is good because that helps maintainers as well. These are well-structured PRs. Things look the same or have the same structure at least across pull requests. That's a big help in processing these contributions. Then in terms of unique contributors, this is of course going up every year. This is the total number of contributors since, let's say, the dawn of time 10 years ago when we made EasyBuild publicly available. Of course, we're now hitting over 300, on our way to 350 different contributors to EasyConfigs. And both for Framework and EasyBlocks were well over 100 unique contributors over the years. And yeah, this is still going up steadily. So new people are coming in and are able to find their way how to contribute to EasyBuild. That's very good. This is then a slightly different view, the number of unique contributors per year. So for Framework, this is a bit up and down, depending on, again, specific features or what people are interested in working on or adding into the core of EasyBuild. Also for EasyBlocks, it's slightly rocky, although in the last year, we're now hitting almost 50 unique contributors into the EasyBlocks repository in the last year alone. That's quite good. What's interesting is the upward trend for EasyConfigs. So we're getting more and more unique people per year who are opening pull requests for EasyConfig files. And we're getting close to 120 different people in a single year. That's also a bit of a challenge for maintainers. That means they have to communicate and deal with more different people who are maybe working in a slightly different way or who have a different experience with EasyBuild. So that's a bit of a challenge for maintainers, but yeah, we're sort of keeping up with that. I'm not sure why there's a dip here in 2019. It's actually more a peak in 2018. But yeah, if you look over that, it's sort of a straight line going up. So will this trend continue? I'm not sure. We'll see how that goes. And all of these contributions are processed by the EasyBuild maintainers. We currently officially have 20 EasyBuild maintainers. You can see all the details here in our documentation where the list of names are and their affiliations. Some maintainers are definitely more active than others. Some are officially still a maintainer, so they still have merge rights into the GitHub repositories, but are no longer active as a maintainer. So they're no longer actively helping out with incoming contributions. And that's fine. People shift roles in their work or move on to another site, things like this. At some point, we'll probably have to revisit the current list of maintainers a bit and make sure we have a good view on who's still actively helping out with contributions and see if we need to recruit additional maintainers. So currently we have roughly about a dozen of people who are sufficiently active or significantly active, which is not that bad. And in the last year or so, we added 4 additional maintainers. Simon was actually added end of 2020, but I'm still counting that as last year as well. And then Bob and Sebastian agreed or accepted our invitation to become a maintainer. And we've also actually added my colleague Balash as a co-maintainer, mostly if I'm not around or on holiday, that he can still get things merged that are relevant for our team. Actually, I've been the only maintainer in the UGent team for several years, and Balash is spending quite a lot of time on installations as well. So it made sense to also ensure that he has maintainer rights. Of course, more helping hands here are always welcome. if somebody has an idea for a maintainer, so suggesting someone, or if someone says, maybe I can spend some time on helping out with incoming contributions, and I think I'm up for that in terms of skills, and maybe having a couple of hours a week or something to help out with that. Definitely let us know. So either contact me directly through Slack or through email, or any of the other maintainers that you may know personally, and we'll check if that's a good idea to do. It depends if we have some requirements for maintainers which are documented, but if you meet those requirements, then we're pretty flexible in making sure that people can get the access they need to help out. EasyBuild conf calls, it's important also here to mention that. So we have a bi-weekly, so every other week, a conf call through Zoom on 2 different times to cater to different time zones, 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central European time. We've been keeping this schedule of a conf call every other week up since 2013. So we're getting close to 200 conf calls so far. So this is a very good way to engage with the EasyBuild community, to try and keep up with ongoing developments and where the project is heading. And we're actually seeing increased adoption currently. It's almost like people are less afraid to jump into a virtual meeting than before. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that, but usually we have about a dozen or so participants, and yeah, sometimes pretty lively discussion as well, which is quite good. We keep detailed notes on all these conf calls, and they're available through this link on top of the slide. And then the tech talks as well. This has been, I think, quite well received in the EasyBuild community. We had 2 in 2020 on OpenMPI and on using ARM. And last year we had 3 on FlexiBLAS and on the new AMD Rome and Milan CPUs, and 1 very recently on MPI Trampoline. We're always looking for ideas for additional talks. So of course, some of those topics are stolen by the presentations this week. But going forward in the next couple of months, we will definitely like to organize some of these tech talks already. So any ideas, any suggestions here are definitely welcome. And then we're getting close to the end here. So this is one of the final questions in the survey. How do you rate EasyBuild overall? Of course, the bias, I think, is pretty clear here. People who hate EasyBuild will probably not work their way through the last question of the survey. So there's definitely a bit of bias here. But actually, over time, this is getting more and more positive, which is still surprising me a bit. So if you look at the dark green line, the excellent line is slowly going up. And there's less people that say okay, more people that say great or excellent. So this is becoming more and more positive. And so far, nobody has ever answered pretty bad. I probably shouldn't point this out, because then next year somebody will answer pretty bad, but we'll see how it goes. So it looks like we're doing quite well overall. There's definitely things we can improve, but we're doing quite okay. And then some high-level goals that I see for the coming year. Yeah, reworking the documentation. I really want to get this done rather than keep talking about it, and actually get our hands dirty, and hopefully get lots of help from this by not only maintainers, but also outside contributors. Something I'm also hoping to find time for, and maybe the rich output style can be helpful here as well. So producing warnings in yellow and errors in red and things like that could be helpful, but also just really extracting the actual error from failing commands. So if you run a make and it fails in the end, it sometimes can take a bit of time to pinpoint the actual problem. But usually we're just always looking for the same pattern. So EasyBuild can probably point out those error lines a lot better than a human can. Getting this 100% right all the time is going to be difficult, but it can probably do a very good job at trying to pinpoint the problem for you. And then also any enhancements that we can make in the EasyBuild framework. So again, bringing the focus a bit back to the core of EasyBuild. So any changes or improvements we can make there that save time, both for users, and better error reporting is definitely one of them, but also for maintainers. So anything we can do to more quickly process contributions or spend less time, less attention, less focus on contributions is definitely things we should do. We already have some ideas there left and right, but we should really implement them as well and make sure they are put in place. And then a goal that was there last year as well, but didn't really make any good progress on, is more extensive testing that goes a bit against spending less time on contributions. But we do want to make sure that whatever we merge in EasyBuild is actually fully working and not just on a single test system, but as broadly as possible. We want to spend some time in testing in different operating systems as well, so not just CentOS 7 or Rocky Linux, so the most important or used ones currently, but also things like Ubuntu and maybe other operating systems, because that will help a lot with making installations robust. We have some plans on, so we already have two virtual clusters currently that we're testing on, one hosted by CSCS, where we're testing installations on Intel Haswell, a new one that has been set up very recently, and Jülich as well, where we're now also testing on AMD Rome. So that's already two sufficiently different CPU architectures probably. And we want to expand that a bit also to start testing with ARM, which can be easily done in AWS. We actually have some sponsored credits in the Easy project that we could leverage for that. The question is a bit, if we start testing things there and something is not working in ARM, should that block a pull request? Probably not. So we'll probably have to learn how to deal with that. But just knowing what works and what doesn't on ARM would already be a big help as well. And reframe, which is also going to be one of the talks this week, is probably going to be a big help here as well. So not just testing the installations, but maybe also running some lightweight tests with the software itself to ensure that things are properly working, may be worth the effort. And then the challenges, lots of challenges ahead, I would say. The top bullet is exactly the same as last year. So we're getting more and more requests for software packages. So we looked at some statistics there for our team in Ghent, and this is just, it's going up like crazy. So it's very difficult for us to keep up with incoming software installation requests, even when using EasyBuild. More and more new software that you haven't seen before, which you always have to figure out how to install it properly. Is it fully working? Are there any edge cases that we should take into account to make sure that it's fully working as expected? We're actually getting help from the Inuit consultants there as well. And even then, we're still struggling with keeping up. So that's certainly a growing problem in my view going forward. The increasing diversity that we see, not only Intel and AMD CPUs, but GPUs as well. And the tool chain, so the shift towards Clang-based compilers, that's definitely gonna hurt us or gonna cause some pain in the coming years, probably this year already. One small annoyance I would say is keeping EasyBuild compatible with Python 3. So every new Python 3 version, sub-version, like Python 3.10, has small breaking changes, and we have to often make significant changes in EasyBuild to take that into account. That's very annoying, but if we want to keep EasyBuild compatible going forward with these new Python versions, that just work we will have to do, and usually pretty early on, before there's any people adopting those Python versions. We should try and beat them to the punch and make sure EasyBuild already works on those Python versions. We have a very good test suite and framework, very extensive. So we're pretty sure as soon as the tests pass, it's also working as expected on that Python version. So that's a very good thing. And then of course, keeping up with incoming contributions, as I've shown, this is a growing challenge. We're getting more and more pull requests every year by more and more different contributors. So you have to talk to more people to get things, everything the way we like it, and to get them mergeable. So definitely there's work to do there. And one of the things we could definitely work on, and that's one of the talks on Friday as well, is working on a better bot that tries to take care of more stuff in the place of humans, especially the communication with the contributors. Some of that can be automated, not just telling what goes wrong if a test fails, but also what the next step is, or having like a checklist for pull requests, and making it clear to the contributors, we want this checklist to fully pass before we can consider merging your pull request. So trying to push back as much as possible the work to the contributor automatically is probably a good idea. So we can keep up with incoming pull requests. All right, that's what I had. A bit longer than I expected, but I had like 70 slides as well. So if people are still up for asking questions, I'm happy to take some, if there are any. So as before, please raise your hand in Zoom so we can allow you to unmute if there are any questions. Or maybe Simon or Alan can take a look at the Slack channel if there's anything relevant there being asked. No questions at all is absolutely fine as well, of course. This is the last talk for today, by the way. We'll get started again tomorrow. Let me check the time. So tomorrow we're starting at 3 p.m. UTC. So add 1 if you're in Central Europe. Okay, and we do have a question by Alan.
Yes, Alan was about to.
Well, it just came from the Slack. There was a bit of discussion on it about why we don't adopt FlexiBus in the Intel toolchain as well and just use the MKL as a backend. And the discussion there was kind of about FFT as well. So what do we do with FFT and FFTW? And yeah, that's the question.
Well, I would say it's actually a good idea to also adopt FlexiBus in Intel if there's no problems with it. So that's something we have to test, of course, and use MKL as the default backend. So when you really use it, there's nothing really changing other than FlexiBus sitting in between. So if that doesn't cause any trouble when building it with Intel compilers, it's definitely worth considering. And then you get the flexibility to switch to OpenBLAS or Bliss or maybe other BLAS LAPACK backends. Yeah, worth considering. We should take a look at whether that causes any trouble. For FFTW, of course, I think there we're sort of stuck currently. I'm not aware of any libraries that allow this runtime switching between different FFT libraries. I know there's so FFTW hasn't really seen very active development, I would say, in the last couple of years. And I think part of that is because the people who are involved in this project are working on a new project in the scope of the ECP, the exascale computing project. So either a competitor to FFTW is coming or is already there. Whether you can build a library or want to build a library on top of that to automatically switch from one to the other, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Maybe we'll just have to do a hard switch away from FFTW to a new library. That's also possible. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into API compatibilities or anything there, so I'm not sure. That was the 2 questions, right? Did I forget something? I think not. Okay, anything else? Or shall we call it a day for now?
I'm not seeing anything else. There's just there's some general comments, but not actual questions.
Yeah, I'll work my way through them in Slack and see if there's anything useful I can come up with to reply. Okay, then I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much, everyone. And hopefully also see you tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll start with a couple of side presentations on EasyBuild and then on related projects, CVMFS, Singularity / Apptainer, and then the spec roadmap update as well to wrap things up tomorrow. Thanks a lot.